All right, a little update on the Memphis Division, Southern Railway, 1975-ish over here. I got a birthday present of some track and turnouts and stuff from my mom. Thanks, Mom. I appreciate it. Turn the big 5-0 coming up here, so she was very generous with me. So we lengthened the siding out to its correct length. And we got the two cars spotted about where they're going to be spotted in the future. We come around again. There's the 72 overpass. Come this way. Sorry for the fast pan, but down here we lengthen the siding about to its length. There was a building there the other day. I pulled out all the pieces of the Pike stuff building that's going to be sitting there. Kind of looking together to see what that's going to look like as we throw it together. Swinging around. No real changes here. And once again, that building's a stand-in for Flexco. No changes through here, though all this track just got laid in. It was here the other day, but it comes down here now. There's done a curved turnout here. So now the track over here starts to take on a little closer to prototype. So in this space here, we're still waiting on a left-hand turnout, or back ordered a bunch of different places. This will be the Lnn Interchange going that way. So there'll be two stub tracks and a track disappearing off into the backdrop. Then over here behind it are the former tracks coming down to the depot in Sheffield, which will be abandoned. There'll just be railroad ties and stuff embedded in weedy rundown lots, and then the new road swinging around it will cut through, and that'll be newer. All right, so this line over here is what's just been added. So formerly it was just this one and this one. So all this back line here, all that was just kind of just laying there. So this line, putting this turnout back over here, because the coal train, again, the empty coal train sits and waits right here until the loaded one comes, eastbound in. Once the loaded one passes it, it takes this kind of crossover right here onto the second main, and then heads on out to the Pride loader. So in reality, that crossover is in here. Just didn't have. Well, I had the space for it, but again, with what I'm going to be operating on in here, so there's a business there. There'll be a boxcar, ramp offload back in there. With those couple of things and the Lnn Interchange, I was like, I got a, track 3 to track 2 back here, coming this way. Be a lot helpful, really helpful for the local to have this crossover here to go back that way. So again, my railroad, my rules, just kind of threw that in. So I put up these pair of curved turnouts here, so we get a little 3-track yard. But again, I think there were 4 or 5 tracks at the time of mine. And again, behind it again is this area that's going to be in the space. It's just going to be grassed over ties and buried rails and stuff. Where this was the tail end of the second generation Sheffield yard. Well, not Sheffield yard, but first generation Sheffield yard. Second, Southern set of Southern facilities here in the area. The first ones being back in Tuscumbia. This would be where they moved out of Tuscumbia and moved over here. So we got main 1, main 2, third main here, which is not really third main. It's just a through storage track. Because again, you have this industry here, which this building again is just a stand-in. It'll be something a couple stories about that size and into the backdrop. This spur right here goes off to nitrate 1, which is never really used, so it'll be sunken and abandoned-ish looking and just kind of disappear into some trees and stuff back in here. Now, I laid in the house track turnout and house tracks here. All the time I was at the station, this had a fence around it and a partially disassembled steam engine sitting here the whole time I was a kid, and I so much just wanted to crawl over that fence and play and climb all over that, you know, partially just assembled steam engine. But, you know, of course, my grandfather's nowhere in the world he's going to let me do that. But he did know the story of it. So it was, you know, somebody had bought it and was trying to, you know, restore it and go do something. And it just finally disappeared after a while, and then they took up the house track and whatnot. But again, the stand-in for Sheffield Station. Back here where these 86-foot cars are, this third line, and again, in real life, there's actually 2 tracks here, not just one. Before, you know, this you know, facilities back here. But again, a lot of times in the mid 70s, they were just, you would just find string of of identical cars stored here. So that's kind of also represented by back here on these tracks, where just, you know, extra cars just weren't used at the moment. They didn't want them, you know, kind of sitting in Sheffield Yard, taking up space there because it was active and everything over there was moving, you know, through. So they just would store stuff here. Obviously, you're never going to store TOFC sitting here. I just happen to have those cars out. Here's my vitamin, which I haven't taken today. And then here again is our car shop. So, you know, I got a bunch of 40-foot cars sitting there. 40-foot cars were still in revenue service. You know, the PS1, you know, 40-footers were still in revenue service on the Southern at this point. I imagine the cars I'm ultimately going to have sitting there are probably going to be scare up some older, you know, much older. I'll probably, you know, dig up some of the original Herald Southern cars that are 1975. Are wood cars still running around? You know, potentially. But again, what's just going to, these tracks are not going to be really, you know, quote, active tracks. Theoretically, they could be switched out, but it's just going to be storage for cars that are just haven't been, you know, sent to the dismantler yet. So they'll cut, you know, go through this, and then kind of peter out in here. A couple tracks. I'm not real happy with this turnout going that way again, because I had a guy on a board who's like, hey, kind of, you know, watch that space between the last track and the board. You know, number one, just, you know, gotta have, you know, room for fingers, but number two, you really do want to have a little bit of scenery depth in there, and I absolutely agree. This just happened to be what I had sitting there as I hook all this stuff up, but I still think this is going to end up being a turnout. Excuse me, I'll probably take this out and just let this be straight, and probably make this piece right here like it was a turnout, and you know, keep going. Because again, in the old days, the turntable and the roundhouse were back in here. So it's just going to be, you know, chock-a-block with old foundations, you know, torn up track looking stuff, and as we get further and further along in that respect. So yeah, the more I talk about it, the more this one's going to come out. And it's actually, since I need a left-hand turn on the other side, this one will wander over there to where those the Lnn Interchange is, and fix that issue over there. So that's pretty much the update as far as all the new stuff that came in. So I mean, I'm just thrilled to death with, you know, how this went in fairly quickly, and you know, the DCC system is hooked up, and so no, you know, it's not chirping any. That's going to be the next thing that I'm really looking into. I got to get some protection in for the thing. This all has to get pulled up, and this has to get milled down, because you can see this is, you know, a big lip here, and so it's you know, obviously the height differences here. I mean, again, this is set up as a emergency swing out, and the more I think about this, the more I may be leaning towards, you know, leaving it just one deck, a couple turns down on a helix over in the corner, and staging at what is ultimately this level, which used to be, originally was planned to be, you know, scenic layout. But the more I keep thinking about it, I was like, you know, I've got plenty to do up here on this one level. Again, given train lengths that I'm planning and whatnot, it definitely is set up to where there's definitely gonna have to be multiple locals running from Sheffield Yard out here to switch all of this. Plus, still gonna run some passenger ops. So definitely, there's not a lack of things going on this one deck that would lead me to be say, hey, I definitely need that second deck to have stuff to do. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, hey, I'd rather get closer to finish, and I do have some rather large kit bashes over here, Sheffield Steel, of things that I got to get done. And then here in the town of Sheffield, I mean, that's pretty representative. That was a big railroad hotel that burned. That's a little freight house model I got somewhere. I'll finish it out. I got all the windows and roofing and stuff, but it'll be perfect, for that abandoned, freight house right there in that spot. And then, like I said, the Lnn Interchange kind of disappears into that corner. Little concrete supply thing here. So I think there's plenty here to keep, myself and heck, 3-4 operators, a couple guys on some through trains, and like I said, there's gonna have to be multiple locals to run all the industries. I suspect there will be, again, Sheffield Yard would be, here, so there'll be a local to operate. Switch these two, this guy and Flexco. I mean, that's between there's 8-10 cars worth of switching right there. If not, obviously with capability of being a couple more if I needed to. And then definitely over here in a couple cars here in Tuscumbia. You wouldn't really be touching anything here at the station unless just something happened, something on the house track every once in a blue moon. 1 or 2 here. There's gonna be 2 spots for this building, 1 there, potentially 2 for 40-foot cars. Got the interchange, 3 cars in, 3 cars out. It'll be something like that. Car 2 here, Sheffield Steel. And this one will always be kind of interesting because it's only a single track. It's not like you just put the loads on one side, yank the empties from the other. It'll always be you got to pull. They may have to pull these 2 out, but leave those 2 sitting there. They may have to get the box car out for outbound windows or whatever it was they were making, and leave everything else there. So that'll definitely provide enough operations down here for, like I said, a second local coming from Sheffield over to here and run, and operating over here. So, there'll basically be an operator here messing around. And then you've got, like I said, the passenger ops will, again, come up, at this point, would come up from the, from staging, run down here on track 1, going that way, just stop at the station, and go that way, and go railroad west, and then obviously the return coming back railroad east, with the potential for if I really was interested, could run theoretically run something from the Lnn coming down from that way, but again, that would be some kind of one-off kind of situations. But the more I think about it and the more I talk about it, the more I'm leaning towards leaving this as the only scenic deck, and just building a truncated, I don't know, 3 turns down to, and then down to a staging level that probably wouldn't be all the way down here, because again, we're not talking about scenic railroad, but down to something that's I can get a hand in there and fix cars if necessary, and it may drop again down, come out this way, and then be down here out in this level, but just a little bit of a grade to reduce the number of turns necessary on this helix. And then again, if I get to do that, then that does still give me the opportunity of potentially running creating a Pride loader loop for the coal train up here, which I have laid it out. I mean, that's a 48-inch, it's a 4-foot square, helix area. So that coal train definitely, I'm pretty sure the number of cars I've got sitting there is that's a 4-foot loop with, the turnout for it would be, right in here somewhere and split off. And anyway, I definitely, I'm going to probably ultimately, I think no matter what happens, the attempt at that's going to be on top of the helix. Whether it works out or not, I'm not 100%. Again, we'll see. But it's something that even as a kid, I hated that coal train because it's so boring. It was 98, same car, 98, the same car and 7 locomotives every single time. Well, it was a unit train. So, it is, but, it's something I remember and something, having driven out the remains of the loader out there, it is basically abandoned at this point. And poked around a little bit, took a lot of pictures back in, all the facilities. They're all still there, just not in use. And it definitely would be a major feature of the railroad, and to have it, be not operational, but functional as a, loop it in, split the locomotives, all that kind of stuff. It would definitely be really, really neat. But that's down the road. So all the lower layout stuff over here against this other wall. Oh man, again, I keep going, all right, I've already built all this, what am I gonna do with it? And it's like, well, you could, Sheffield Yard, from the other end of Sheffield Yard, there was a spur that ran up to the Alcoa plant and the Ford plant and all the other, major heavy industries in Sheffield. So, the spur's still there. The former Alcoa plant is still there and operating, and it's been through a number of different companies. So that, that's a potential, and just have this be, because the, staging would be at this level at that point. And it, it would just be, a loop would come down, staging would be here. And, again, it would kind of climb from, say, about here, going up to get to, to try to reduce the number of turns and the grade in the turns. But there would be a front, the quote, that spur would come off down here and just run along the front, along the side, run the front side, turn in here, and just run down there, and be its own little switching district for the Alcoa and the Ford plant. I mean, again, because there's all the things you could, industry-wise, everything else that would, and it would basically be just kind of run, because it does run through a little bit of, so it'd run through there, nothing, wouldn't be a whole lot, and then roll in here. So, and then there would be, the Alcoa plant, so the run here, dip this way, and then into the, let's just say that's Ford, and then the spur would, dip to the back, and then put the Alcoa plant, and then and the lines and stuff in the back, and then just have it terminate here without, and there not be anything here. That would just be open, permanently, which would save me from having to build a actual working gate to get back to my workshop. And again, right now at 50, I'm not too unhappy with the duct under here. I've learned not to hit my head, and again, in any given situation, I'm going to be the only person going back there. So I wouldn't be asking, 65 or 70-year-old participants to try to weasel their way back there for any particular reason. Dispatch would be from out in the rest of the basement, which you guys, I don't think I've ever shown anybody, but this is the rest of the basement area at this point. Train room's right there. I've got a projector here, and that whole white space there is basically, the TV when the projector's on. So during, potentially during operations, this is A, crew lounge, and B, that you would dispatch from out here, potentially at that table. And then we'd run, either video from somebody, again, in my back of my head, I've always had, all right, I'll go get a camera on one of these locomotives and just, wherever the locomotive's got the camera in it, that's just going to run video on the projector out here for whoever's just hanging out waiting for whatever. So that's the grand scheme of things. And again, so if I did that, especially with that little branch line, this would still necessitate a double swing gate here. But again, it's single track here, which is basic scenery. It would be the same thing down here, single track here. So the track setup at that point would be elementary. So the more I think about it, I think I'm going to give up. I won't say give up. I'm just going to reduce the scope of this layout. And again, just to given what I've done and what what running on it right now is, and it's like, what, on days when I just want to come down and run a train, I can come down here and run a train, and I'm just put something on, going, running the circle at the top, give it that option of a continuous loop potentially. Up there, simplify staging by massively by only having track up and down, two tracks up and down that are, one goes one way, one goes the other. There'll be none of the crazy crossover stuff in there that I was having to plan for the way I wanted to run the layout in its original iteration. And change it electronically, much simpler. I eliminate an entire, the center section of deck that was, that would have been scenic, and which would now just be, so I would still have plenty of staging for anything I want to do. It would make it so that basically I've got, I ordered some of the brand new scale trains, SD40s, got some of those on order. Supporting them, hoping that they're going to chug out some SD45s and some GP30s, because if they did that, SD45s and GP30s, that pretty much would have me at a good mix of locos and really representative of 1975, with the exception of some U-boats. Got plenty, got some run through power already. I got a Santa Fe unit. I got a UP unit. Just need a couple of Missouri Pacific units to run, because there was a Missouri Pacific train that ran from down in the Sheffield yard. So I'd have to have a couple, 3 Missouri Pacific units for that one run, and it would just recycle itself. It would just run around the loop in staging and then go back the other way. For the most part. So that would get me to the point where not too many more locomotives would be needed for purchase, and then can really start concentrating on the layout electronics of signaling, detection, and whatnot, and really getting it plugged into JMRI. So 23 minutes, that's a long time for a video. I know I'm just kind of rambling about a lot of things, but that's I'm literally thinking as I'm talking, which really helps me out sometimes. All right, so till the next time. Southern Railway Memphis Division, 1975-ish.